Today, our topic of discussion is going to be pentose phosphate pathway or the HMP shunt pathway or hexose monophosphate shunt pathway. The pentose phosphate pathway is a process by which glucose molecule is being used up by some of the cells not to produce ATP. It is not a ATP generating process, but it is a process by which reducing cofactors like NADPH and certain glycolytic intermediates such as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate and also ribulose and ribose 5-phosphate are produced by this sequence of steps. So this is not an ATP generating process. In this we give rise to NADPH molecules. NADPH molecule is not the same as that of the NADP molecules, because NADP molecules, as we know, can give rise NADH molecules, because the NADH molecules we know can enter the electron transport chain, whereas these NADPH molecules cannot enter the ETS or the electron transport chain. They basically are the reducing cofactors which are required in various reactions of our body like lipid biosynthesis. So this HMP shunt pathway occurs primarily in some of the very important organs of our body like the red blood cells, adrenal cortex, the gonads, where there is huge lipid biosynthesis or steroid biosynthesis or steroidal hormone biosynthesis is taking place. Similarly, the HMP shunt pathway is totally absent in the case of muscles where there is no fat biosynthesis taking place. So now let's come to the steps of the hexose monophosphate shunt or the pentose phosphate pathway. The hexose monophosphate shunt pathway can be divided into two parts, oxidative and the non-oxidative phase. First is the oxidative phase. Oxidative phase is the phase in which the pathway gives rise to the reducing cofactors like the NADPH molecules. Now, the primary substrate which is used is glucose 6-phosphate. Glucose 6-phosphate is acted upon by glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. As we all know that dehydrogenase will give rise to some reducing factors. So here we get one NADP molecule getting converted to one molecule of NADPH plus H plus. This glucose 6-phosphate, after reacting with glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, give rise to 6-phosphogluconolactone. This 6-phosphogluconolactone, when acted upon by 6-phosphogluconolactonase, give rise to 6-phospho-D-gluconate. 6-phospho-D-gluconate then undergo another dehydrogenation reaction where it is acted upon by 6-phospho-D-gluconate dehydrogenase. Here again we get another molecule of NADP getting converted to NADPH plus H plus, and we get the product which is 3-keto 6-phospho D-gluconate. This 3-keto 6-phospho D-gluconate will lead to an elimination of a CO2 molecule, and finally this will give rise to a product which is ribulose 5-phosphate. So glucose 6-phosphate is acted upon by glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Here we must keep another thing in mind, that here we use a molecule of Mg2+, and then we get 6-phosphogluconolactone. This 6-phosphogluconolactone is next acted upon by 6-phosphogluconolactonase to form 6-phospho-D-gluconate. This 6-phospho-D-gluconate is then acted upon by 6-phospho-D-gluconate dehydrogenase, which again uses up another molecule of magnesium to give rise to 3-keto 6-phospho-D-gluconate. And by elimination of CO2 molecule from this step, we finally give rise to ribulose 5-phosphate, which is the product for the oxidative phase of the HMP shunt pathway. So by this we can complete the oxidative phase. Now let's come to the non-oxidative phase of the pentose phosphate or the hexose monophosphate shunt pathway. Here this ribulose 5-phosphate which has been generated is the primary substrate. So this ribulose 5-phosphate is acted upon by two enzymes. On one side it is acted upon by ribulose 5-phosphate, rather it is ribose 5-phosphate isomerase, and on the other side it is acted upon by ribulose 5-phosphate 3-epimerase. Ribulose 5-phosphate, when acted upon by ribose 5-phosphate isomerase, gives rise to ribose 5-phosphate, and ribulose 5-phosphate, when it is acted upon by ribulose 5-phosphate 3-epimerase, it gives rise to xylulose 5-phosphate. This ribose 5-phosphate and xylulose 5-phosphate are the product which is formed after the first step. This ribose 5-phosphate and xylulose 5-phosphate now in the next step together are acted upon by an enzyme called transketolase. This is a TPP requiring enzyme which is thiamine pyrophosphate, or it requires vitamin thiamine. So it is a thiamine pyrophosphate requiring enzyme. Here in the transketolase is an enzyme which will transfer two carbon compounds or two carbon group from the ketose to the aldols. So here we know that xylulose 5-phosphate is the ketose. So here from xylulose 5-phosphate there is going to be transfer of two carbon compound to the ribose 5-phosphate, therefore giving rise to pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate on one side and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate on the other side. Here we obviously know that glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate which are formed are, one is an aldose and the other is a ketose. Glyceraldehyde, as its name suggests, is obviously an aldose, whereas the pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate is obviously a ketose. Next, these two compounds now are acted upon again in the subsequent reactions by an enzyme called aldolase. Aldolase is an enzyme which transfers 3-carbon compound. It now transfers 3-carbon compound from a ketose to a aldose. Therefore, this is a ketose molecule, this is an aldose molecule. So there will be transfer of 3-carbon compound from pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate to glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, thus giving rise to, on one side we get erythrose 4-phosphate and the other side we get fructose 6-phosphate. On one side we get erythrose 4-phosphate, on the other side we get fructose 6-phosphate. Here fructose 6-phosphate is the hexose molecule, erythrose 4-phosphate is the aldose molecule. Now in the last and the final step we have erythrose 4-phosphate which is acted upon by this xylulose 5-phosphate, and these two are now being acted upon by another molecule of transketolase which is also requiring PPP as a cofactor, and also it uses PPP as a cofactor which is vitamin thiamine. So here we know that xylulose 5-phosphate is nothing but a ketose and erythrose 4-phosphate is an aldose. Thus we get one product as glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and the other product as fructose 6-phosphate. So here these products, glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, the fructose 6-phosphate, and this ribose 5-phosphate are some of the very important glycolytic intermediates which we are formed. Glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate are glycolytic intermediate, whereas ribose 5-phosphate is very important for the nucleotide biosynthesis. So this is what we have. Now, how to get the calculation done? The most important thing is that, just see, here we have 5-phosphate, we are getting ribose 5-phosphate, we are getting xylulose 5-phosphate. 5 plus 5 gives 10. In the next step, we have glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and pseudoheptulose 7-phosphate. So these 5 plus 5 in the previous step has given 10. Here 3 plus 7 also gives 10, and in the last step 6 plus 4 also is giving 10. So we can say that there is no loss of carbon molecule. It is just transfer process, and there is no loss of carbon molecule in this process. Finally, when erythrose 4-phosphate is acted upon by xylulose 5-phosphate, the total comes to be 9. And we will see that glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate are formed, giving the total to be 9. So this is a way we can check whether we have written the entire pathway correctly. Now, after we have completed the non-oxidative phase, so this is the phase which is known as the non-oxidative phase of the pentose phosphate pathway. Now, we're coming to the regulation part of the hexose monophosphate shunt or the pentose phosphate pathway. The pentose phosphate pathway do not have a regulation as such, because this pentose phosphate pathway is a way by which 30% of the energy for RBC is generated by this process, because RBC as such do not undergo the glycolytic process. Now, this process of HMP shunt can therefore be a process in which the RBC generates NADPH molecule. So we can write the entire reaction of HMP shunt as glucose 6-phosphate plus 12 NADP plus 7H2O, giving rise to NADPH plus H plus 6CO2. Here we are giving glucose 6-phosphate, which is being acted upon by 12 NADPH molecule, which will react with 7 molecules of water and finally will give 12 molecules of NADPH, H plus and CO2. So this is a process, this is the reaction for the entire process of HMP shunt pathway. So this is what we have in HMP shunt pathway. So now, what is the use of this HMP shunt pathway? That is also very important, because this HMP shunt occurs mostly in the cells where the biosynthesis of lipids take place, such as the gonads, the adrenal cortex, where we know tremendous amount of lipid biosynthesis is taking place. So what are the uses of the HMP shunt pathway, or rather what are the uses of NADPH molecule? NADPH molecule is very important as for maintaining the RBC membrane integrity. We know that a cell in its lifespan produces various kinds of ROS or reactive oxygen species, such as O2 minus, O2 rather, H2O2 minus, etc., which gets acted upon by superoxide dismutase, to form H2O2 plus O2 minus. Now, this H2O2 gets acted upon by glutathione peroxidase to form H2O plus O2 minus. Here we have a molecule called glutathione, GSS, and which is glutathione, which is glutathione reduced and glutathione oxidized. When this H2O2 molecule is acted upon by glutathione peroxidase, H2O and O2 minus form, the glutathione molecule reduced state goes into the oxidized state. So, to get back the glutathione to its reduced state, we need a molecule of NADPH. So, we have molecule of NADPH which gets converted to NADP by this process. So, it's a process to maintain the membrane integrity present in the RBC cell membrane. Next, it is also seen to be important in the oxidative burst which takes place in the macrophages. We know that macrophages are molecules, or they are rather hemopoietic cells which fight against various infections. So, when a bacteria is engulfed by a macrophage, these macrophage produces various reactive oxygen species. Reactive oxygen species to so that the bacteria disintegrates or the bacteria dies out. So, this reactive oxygen species which are produced to neutralize, or rather to maintain the state of the macrophage molecule, here also we make use of the NADPH molecule. Subsequently, it is also used to maintain the iron which is present inside the hemoglobin in the ferrous state, used for maintaining iron in the ferrous or Fe2 plus state inside the hemoglobin. It is used for maintaining the iron in the form of inside the hemoglobin. It is used in macrophages, as I already told. It is also used in the synthesis of lipids or fatty acid biosynthesis. It is used in the fatty acid biosynthesis procedure, and this NADPH, this HMP shunt pathway occurs primarily in molecules where there is lipid biosynthesis. It also plays a very important role in the synthesis of steroid hormones. Now, so these are the various importance of NADPH molecules which we have come to know. It also helps in the free radical scavenging, which is done mostly by the macrophages, as we have already discussed, and it also prevents the methemoglobin formation. It also prevents the methemoglobin formation. So these are some of the importance of the HMP shunt pathway. Primarily, it is being used to maintain the RBC membrane integrity. RBC membrane integrity is being maintained by this HMP shunt pathway. This HMP shunt pathway also plays a very important role in the case of detoxification of various drugs, which takes place mostly by the P450 enzyme or P450 enzymes. So this NADPH here in this step also plays a very important role. Now, coming to the next part, that is the diseases which are caused mostly by this pathway, or the diseases which are caused by the deficiency of the hormone or the enzymes which are present in this HMP shunt pathway. So the deficiency of G6PD or glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. This glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase is an enzyme which is the first step, which regulates the first step of the pentose phosphate pathway. So in the case of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, if a person receives certain malarial drugs, such as certain malarial drugs, it is seen that it leads to hemolytic anemia, or it can also lead to something called methemoglobinemia, which is where the iron goes to the Fe3 plus state, or the iron becomes Fe3 plus, where normally it should be in the Fe2 plus state. So this is a way it can cause Fe3 plus iron. The iron goes into the Fe3 plus state in the hemoglobin atom. And secondly, it can also lead to something called hemolytic anemia, where it is hemolytic anemia, but it is drug induced. It is drug induced hemolytic anemia. So before giving certain drugs, such as some malarial drugs, doctors always needs to check whether the person is suffering from G6PD deficiency. If a person suffers from G6PD deficiency, then there are certain drugs which the person cannot be given. If they are induced with certain drugs, then they may suffer from methemoglobinemia, or they may suffer from drug-induced hemolytic anemia. So by this, I would like to conclude my session on the hexose monophosphate shunt pathway. In the coming lecture, we are going to focus basically on the glycogenesis and the glycogenolysis part of the glycogen metabolism. So